Okay, so sofa cake. I basically downloaded a photo of a sofa that I wanted to make, um, and found out the dimensions using, I think it was on Amazon or something. Anyway, so then I can basically divide it each measurement by 10, which gave me the dimensions for this cake. I will load these on a PDF just so you've got the dimensions to refer to. Then using those measurements, obviously cut out your rectangle, which will go underneath your sofa. It's just easier to do it this way so that you can move it and add it onto a nice clean board. You can do the sofa directly onto the board if you're neat and tidy. I'm not that neat and tidy when I decorate cakes, so I sort of will add it onto a board underneath just because it suits me. Depends on how you work. Like I said, if you're neat and tidy, you can do this straight onto your finished board. Now I'm just cutting just inside the dimensions of that board, so that, because once you've added your ganache and your fondant, then that is how wide your cake is going to be. So first piece going on, you can see it's just inside the width of the board. I was going to do a double layer, and then it suddenly occurred to me that actually one layer will probably be tall enough to be the height of the top of the cushions, which it is. So I've added a thick layer of buttercream, and then this is obviously sped up. I wish I could work this fast, but I do not. This is sped up, so don't go thinking I'm some crazy superwoman when it comes to buttercreaming a cake. This is sped up, so yes, add your buttercream on top. Get a decent layer so that when people have a piece of cake, they get a good ratio of buttercream to cake. You could use mud cake as well if you're worried about using sponge cake. I don't have any issues with using sponge cake, but some people say that they struggle sometimes with structures. Up to you. Next up, I'm measuring the back of the cake, the cushion, and just adding a piece on top. If your sponge cake is particularly floppy, you could do this the other way round. Make your front seat cushion a little bit narrower, and then add the back piece so that it's standing behind the cushion that you sit on, if that makes sense. You can also add straws down through that top cushion or the back of the sofa to add extra structure. After you've chilled your cake, then you can add on your ganache. Now, the reason I'm adding ganache on top of buttercream is just to add a little bit more stability again. It sets really firm. I know I can add fondant on top, and it's not going to fall apart when I start decorating and adding details and things. We'll keep it really strong. So yeah, add your ganache on, smooth it out as best you can. Pop that back in the fridge to set. Making orange fondant. Don't worry if you don't get the colour exactly right, because we're actually going to paint the sofa anyway. If you have got a really nice bright orange or even like a tan colour, then great, you're all good to go. You can just add your shading on and that will be that. I didn't, so I'm adding my orange fondant, attaching, sort of working the corners and the edges first, and then it's easy to just pull that skirt out and attach the rest of the fondant to the shape. I don't know how much you know about working with sort of square cakes or cakes with edges like this. Yeah, always sort of work on the corners and the edges first, and then work the rest of the fondant onto the cake. Here I just added a little bit of ganache onto the board to attach the sofa onto. Now we're adding the fringing. So I've drawn my line along so I know how far my fringing needs to go up. And then I'm just using the tool there to add the dents in. This line here is the one for to show the cushion. Could have gone a little bit deeper actually to make that a bit more detailed, but that's all good. Next up, I'm just sort of measuring. I've gone sort of every 2 centimeters. You can have them spaced a little bit wider or whatever. Just that to add that detailing on the back. Now ignore the fact that I have added the top cushion or the top rolly bit on the back of the sofa, because I'm gonna pull that off in a minute because I didn't like it. So I'll talk you through that bit. Just using my ball tool to get a decent indent into the back of the cushions. Then using a sharp tool to draw those lines in between where the sort of pinny buttons would be. Are they buttons? I don't even know if they're buttons. Whatever they are. Just making sure I get a really nice dent in there. We are going to shade this, so it will add more depth, but get a fairly decent depth with your indentation. Next up, I'm literally cutting a rectangle of fondant, making sure it's the correct width. So just double check what your width is there, and rolling it. It's really, really simple, but so effective. Make sure you've used a bit of water there to make sure it will attach. Now, I didn't like that top piece that I'd added, so roll out a piece of fondant, make sure it's the right width, and I've just kind of pulled the edge off a little bit using a rolling pin so that I can attach it easily. I've put a little bit of water along the seam, and then I'm just using that tool to basically force the fondant together. So this will get rid of your seam, hopefully. If not, you can use your finger to smooth it out a little bit more. Just make sure there's a little bit of water along there to join that fondant together. If you are concerned about this join and you feel like you wouldn't be able to get a nice smooth effect like that, then you can actually put that round piece on top of your ganached sofa. Then you roll out your large piece of fondant and cover the whole thing. So if you think that might give you a better look, then that's another alternative that you can use. So I'm just adding in those lines from where the buttons would be. Here I'm just adding the scroll on the end of the sofa. I had a very specific sofa, a very famous sofa that I was following. So I had the image printed that I could refer to, and I noticed that they did have a scroll on either end. So when I rolled out my sausage piece, I just made sure it was that little bit longer so that I had spare to add the scroll in. Just adding in another long indent there along the sofa, which again marks out the cushions. And I'm just adding some kind of dents and marks onto the sofa because, you know, no sofa is perfectly flat, especially one that's been sat on as much as this one has. I'm also adding those little marks around the scrolls. You can see here, because you get that kind of puckered fabric around wood and joins and things. So I'm just kind of adding them on wherever I think there would be some. Next up, I'm using some edible paint. You can mix gel with vodka or rose water, whatever you choose to use. And I've mixed kind of like a bronzy colour with a brown. If you didn't achieve a good fondant colour, then you can now paint your whole sofa. I'm actually using an airbrush colour here because it gave me the perfect coverage and the perfect colour. Don't worry too much about getting into those cracks and dents that you've made because we're going to go over those with a darker colour. I'm mixing a little bit of brown and orange together to get a deeper tone. And I'm just basically going over all of those marks that we made with the fondant tools to add a bit of depth. All along those cushions. And of course, making sure you've done the back of the sofa. And all those little dents that we have made. And we're done. Mine was, as I say, a very specific theme. So I added some extra decoration afterwards, but I just wanted to show you the tutorial on how to make the sofa itself. Thank you so much for watching. Hope this has been helpful, as this is a purchased tutorial. If you have any questions after watching the tutorial or anything you are not sure about, please do flick me through an email and I will do my best to answer your question. Thank you again. Bye.